Why on earth would you want to play a game about voter suppression and political corruption in the winter of 2020 of all times? I have some thoughts on the matter that I'll share with you in a bit, but suffice it to say that today's provided review game Tammany Hall from Pandasaurus Games and designer Doug Eckhart does a very real, very controversial time in American history, and straight out of the gate acknowledges context in a way that makes it seem almost necessary in order to recognize how this all started. This long-form reprint is restocked and hitting shelves right now, so we thought we'd have a look at this 13-year-old game and see if it's worth diving in with Boss Tweed. I'll open the box and take you through it in just a few, but I want to get sidetracked for just a moment about problematic themes in games. It's important to remember in times like these that the games we play matter. There's a massive debate about whether or not playing games with problematic themes is troublesome, and I think the discussion is incredibly valid. The thing to keep in mind is that it's not a conversation about censorship, it's a conversation about mindfulness. Oftentimes all it takes is an acknowledgement of the situation. Tammany Hall provides a little card in the box from the publisher, fully acknowledging the difficult and real problems this game presents. Boss Tweed, the main influencing character of the time, used intimidation, bribery, violence, and massive amounts of corruption to achieve his aims. In this statement, Pandasaurus notes that, and I'm quoting, "Equal access to voting and disenfranchisement are not something that is relegated to history." Given the current political climate, I doubt many would disagree. In light of that fact, Panda notes that they've made a donation to the Brennan Center for Justice, a nonpartisan law and policy organization dedicated to defending democracy. While Tammany Hall may deal with a dark period in our past, it's important to remind ourselves that the shadows of those times are still with us today, waiting for the right person to bring them back out. The topic of whether or not problematic games should be played by modern audiences is one that could handle a whole video by itself, so I won't get too much deeper into it here. Given GLH5's commitment to social justice and representation, I'll simply say this: the conversation needs to continue, and in earnest. With that, let's get back to our review. In the box, we find our large 12-page rulebook, which does a great job not only teaching the game, but also calling out important things to remember during gameplay. Past that, there's the game's board nestled into a slight indentation in the insert, which unfolds to depict a stylized map of Lower Manhattan. Of note, 134 years later, Ghostbusters HQ sets up right here in District 5. Neat, huh? Back in the insert, we have all the game's wooden pieces, cubes in the drawstring bag, and political favor tokens in this channel, player meeples and slander tokens up here. Let's set up for a game, and I'll walk you through it. Tammany Hall takes place in the blocks surrounding the actual physical building denoted here on our board. The goal of the game is to accumulate the most victory points as possible over 16 individual years, played out as rounds. The end of the fourth year will culminate in an election, where votes are 100% manipulated by dubious means, but at least everyone has the chance to manipulate it equally, I guess? Starting each year will be the mayor, unless it's before the first election, then it's just whoever was randomly chosen. The first thing you'll do is check to see if Castle Garden, the predecessor to Liberty Island, is empty. If it is, draw cubes from the bag equal to the number of players plus 2. That means 5 in our game here. Since we're still in the first term, we will only choose one of 2 actions available to us, the ward actions. We can either place 2 of our ward bosses in any wards that are currently active, meaning that there are people living in them, as denoted by these cubes, or we can place a single ward boss in an active ward and then choose a cube from Castle Garden and place it in an active ward as well, either the same one or a different one. Doing so means that we'll get to take a political favor from that cube's faction, which will be of use to us during the elections to come. Since it's now the end of the fourth year, that means we'll have an election. Elections begin by clearing Castle Garden of its inhabitants and then resolving votes in each of the wards in order. We'll always start an election with Ward 1 and then proceed by the arrows through each of the wards until every ward is counted. Each ward with bosses in it will allow the player who owns those bosses to participate. You'll get 1 vote for each boss in the ward, and then you can secretly bid your political favors gained through settlements to increase your total. Since the amount of political favors is open information, there's really only how much you're willing to risk to win to determine. In a closed fist, everyone participating will hold and then reveal the favors they're spending on this election. The trick is, even if you've done a lot for the Irish community, if there are only German settlers in the ward, those Irish favors do you no good. You can only bid favors that match the population of your ward. Add the spent favors to your totals, and whoever has the most wins. Ties are double plus ungood, as that means no one wins and everyone has to leave. You lose. Good day, sir. The winner keeps a single boss in the ward and gains the benefit of the ward if there is one. All favors spent in the bid are lost, so even if you lost the bid, you will lose them. Bid wisely and bid shrewdly. You'll continue in this fashion all the way around the zones until they're tabulated. That done, you'll count how many of the population's cubes are in the wards you've won, and if you have the most, you're named that population's immigrant leader, and you'll gain the coveted spot here on the board with a ward boss as well as 3 of that population's favors. If there's a tie here, both or all players gain the favors. Finally, you'll score a single point for every ward you won, unless you manage to secure the seat of power in Tammany Hall, in which case you'll get 2 points for that ward. Whichever player earned the most points in the election itself is named mayor, and then they will dole out additional offices to the other players as they see fit. Each player must get an office, though not all offices must be assigned. In our 3-player game, 2 of the 5 roles will obviously go unused in this next 4-year term. Depending on the number of players, you may populate a new zone, and then play begins with a new year. Once players are given offices, 2 new actions open up for the rest of the game, which are taken in addition to the previously mentioned ward actions. You can slander your opponents, the height of muckraking being what it is. Once per term, you can spend one of your 3 speech bubble tokens here to choose a ward where you have a ward boss. You spend a political favor that matches a population cube in that ward, and then remove an opponent's ward boss. If you have 2 or more political favors and there's an adjacent ward with that same population and opponent's meeple, you can spend 2 favors and do it again, spreading the slander you conjured up out of thin air. The second action available is granted by your role, and depending on who you're given by the mayor, you could take a political favor of any color from the supply if you're the deputy mayor. You could move a single immigrant cube from a ward with at least 2 other either back to the bag if you are the chief of police, or resettle them to an adjacent ward if you're the precinct chairman. Play proceeds like this for 4 terms, and whoever's gained the most points at the end of the 16th year has secured enough power to declare themselves the winner. All the glory available to you in the late 1860s is yours. So, bully. My players loved Tammany Hall, and it's easy to see exactly why. It's just as much about the metagame as it is about what's actually happening on the board. From the mayor doling out offices based on personal favor to negotiating with your opponents on where you're going to place your ward bosses and also where you're willing not to, there's negotiation aplenty to be had here. While I'm on this topic, the rulebook specifically calls out that you're not allowed to trade the physical political favor tokens you gain throughout the game. This part's important because it removes what is basically your only currency in the game from the negotiations. It also prevents the leader from recruiting the last place player, giving them a stack of political favors to use against the player challenging them for the lead. The only thing you have to use in your negotiation toolbox is your actions and the roles you give or are given. Still, that's more than enough, since as the game progresses, Manhattan opens up wider and wider, and control for key wards becomes even more important. Skillfully traversing which immigrant communities you're going to want to lead becomes its own little minigame, as those extra 3 favors at the end of each term can be backbreaking in the right or wrong hands. Tammany Hall for me personally is a game that's a bit of a double-edged sword. As someone who serves as curator for the board game experiences in my group, I have to be very attentive to each player's wants for a game night. Tammany Hall isn't going to hit the table every night in my group strictly because of the metagame involved. Not everyone wants to constantly be jockeying for both board presence and favor with the other players. Someone like myself, who by virtue of the fact that I introduce my players to so many games is often seen as the person who will win if not stopped, has had a particularly hard time getting people to trust them enough to keep within striking distance of winning. Helping you out here... Thank you, Megan. Helping you out here is the game's elegant balance. The randomness of the cubes added to Castle Garden not only served replay value, but also forced your fellow players into dealing with each other far more often than you'd think otherwise. When there aren't any yellow cubes to be had and one player has been stocking up on German political favors, that player is forced to make some hard decisions and maybe even working with the council president to secure a ward that might otherwise be vulnerable. But also there's this. The trick of this game is that you're not going to want to take an early lead. While it's certainly tantalizing to grasp early control of Tammany Hall's wards and a couple others, cementing yourself as mayor for years 5 through 8 and get to be the one who decides who gets what roles, you're also painting a giant bullseye in your back. If you're more Boss Tweed than, say, Boss Hog, that can be fine as long as you keep that momentum going. Far more satisfying is to play the longer game. hold back and wait for your time to run the whole board, and then keep it. As always, in the words of the great Herb Brooks, play your game. Tammany Hall distills area control and asymmetric player powers into a potent potion, sets it in an awkward time in history, and hopes for the best. Whether or not it will succeed at your table is entirely dependent on your group. Let's go through our checklist before I give you my final thoughts. In the box, rulebook clear and non-gender pronouns. Tammany's rulebook, while physically large, clocks in at only 12 pages, and for each game phase there's a detailed example to clarify the steps involved. Important clarifications are given just in time as you're reading, so it's an excellent resource that's very well done. The book also uses second-person pronouns you and yours throughout. Iconography clear. There's precious little iconography to be had here, but what exists is pretty clear. The political favor discs are color-coded, but also provide flag symbology on them for players who might have issues distinguishing the colors themselves. Packaging well done. While the insert provides plenty of room as well as baggies, the inset channel for the board isn't quite deep enough, so it will slide down when stored vertically, like this. Not a problem really, but you may notice that tokens will shift in this configuration. On the table. Good representation. Abstracting groups of people into colored cubes based on their nation's flag aside, the art in the game comes from the political cartoons of the period and features almost exclusively white men. Boss Tweed dominates the cover art, flanked by even more angry white men. Component quality. Wooden cubes, tokens, and meeples sit alongside 5 thick cardboard punch roll tiles. The board is nicely constructed and everything about this game feels very good on the table. Replay value. Pretty high. The actual gameplay is going to come onto a game of Chase the Leader, who incidentally also gets to decide which player powers and roles everybody else gets. Variation is guaranteed over time, as is the exact method by which players exert control over the board and each other. Fun to lose. Sometimes. It can be hard to find the path to victory if you're behind early, and the micro-negotiations that occur on top of the already foresight-heavy strategy can be intimidating for new players. That being said, there's usually a way to challenge the leader through just a couple of wards, so if you can find it, you can work your way back in. Tammany Hall is a game for a very specific group of people and not for the weak of heart. For the right crew, though, this is a tight, aggressive game of area control that rewards shrewd behavior and the ability to seize upon a moment of weakness. There's a reason this game sells out reprints in short order. If it sounds even remotely like something you'd like, you're definitely going to want to grab it, and soon. I'm Nicholas, reminding you to help protect the game population. Always sleeve your cards. Hey everyone, if you liked our video, please hit that sub button and ring that bell for notifications. Check out all of our other offerings at GLH5.com, and please consider becoming a patron of the channel over at patreon.com/GLHFmagic. It helps us keep making reviews, videos, podcasts, and you can become a member for any dollar amount. We're also always looking for new games to review. You can reach us at glhfmagic@gmail.com. You can follow me, Captain N the Game Master, at CaptainNGM on Twitter and Instagram, and follow the channel at GLHFmagic. Remember, please shop at your local game store whenever possible. Until next time, I'm Nicholas, and good luck. High five.